Imagine being 15 years old and discovering that the entire world has already decided your destiny. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your face is no longer yours, your innocence no longer protected, your childhood no longer safe. Imagine millions admiring you, desiring you, consuming you, long before you even understood what any of it meant. A boy caught in a storm he never asked for, built into an icon he never agreed to become, praised so loudly he could no longer hear himself think. This is the story of the child the world named the most beautiful, and the man who spent the next 50 years trying to escape that crown. A title meant to elevate him, but one that nearly destroyed everything inside him. Today, we confront the price of beauty, the weight of global obsession, and the silent damage that follows a child who becomes a fantasy for millions. And as we begin, ask yourself this: what happens when the world claims a boy before he can claim himself? Before we go deeper, subscribe for more real, unfiltered stories that should never be forgotten. Björn Andresen's story begins in Stockholm in 1955, long before the world would know his name, and long before he understood the weight that would be placed on his shoulders. His father disappeared before he was even born, leaving a silence in the house that no one dared to explain, and leaving Bjorn with questions he was never encouraged to ask. When he was 10, his mother vanished too, and only months later he learned she was dead, a suicide hidden behind half-truths that were meant to protect him but instead left him drifting without answers. With no parents left, Bjorn was taken in by his grandmother, a strict woman shaped by traditional Swedish values and her own dreams of culture and refinement. She believed art could save a child, and she believed even more firmly that Bjorn had the kind of presence that could be shaped into something important, something admired. She pushed him into piano lessons, acting classes, grooming routines, all with a forceful ambition that often overlooked what he wanted, replacing his comfort with her expectations. By the time Bjorn was 15, the industry had already begun to notice his unusual look, the quiet, fragile beauty that made strangers pause, and casting agents looking for something ethereal started circling him. He did small acting projects without realizing he was being prepared for something much bigger, unaware that each small role was pulling him closer to a destiny he never chose. And while he was still just trying to understand who he was, a powerful Italian filmmaker was searching across Europe for a boy who could embody perfection itself. That filmmaker was Luchino Visconti, a legend known for his strict standards, his grand visions, and his obsession with detail, and he was preparing an adaptation of Death in Venice, a story centered on the beauty of a boy named Tadzio who becomes the object of an older man's fixation. Visconti declared that he needed a boy the world would never forget, a boy who could redefine cinematic beauty, and this single demand set wheels in motion that Bjorn could not control. Pressured by his grandmother, he went to the audition, unaware that he was stepping into a world where beauty was treated like currency, and where he was about to be spent long before anyone asked what it would cost him. What Bjorn didn't know, was that he was stepping into a world where beauty was currency. And he was about to be spent. Bjorn enters the audition room expecting a simple test, but instead finds a long table filled with adult men quietly studying him as if he were an object instead of a child. Visconti walks in last, not greeting him, only circling slowly and observing him with an intensity that makes the air feel heavy. Without warning, he instructs Bjorn to turn, remove his shirt, walk across the room, smile, look away, and hold expressions that make him feel exposed in ways he cannot understand. He complies with each instruction because he thinks that is what actors are supposed to do, even though he feels a sinking discomfort he cannot explain. The requests feel strange and personal, but every adult in the room behaves as if these demands are normal, leaving him unsure of his own instincts. Years later he describes this moment simply: "I was a piece of meat," a sentence that reveals the truth he could not express that day. Shortly after the audition, Visconti steps before a crowd of reporters and declares, "He is the most beautiful boy in the world," a phrase that instantly becomes a headline. Bjorn does not grasp how this single sentence will follow him forever, shaping the way strangers think about him and erasing any boundary between his body and public imagination. The declaration transforms him from a boy into a symbol, and symbols cannot protest, ask questions, or protect themselves. When filming begins, He finds himself separated from the other actors, placed in a position where he is observed constantly but rarely spoken to. His body is adjusted, repositioned, touched, and corrected repeatedly, but no one explains the story or the adult themes surrounding his character, leaving him confused about what he is truly portraying. Crew members comment on his appearance openly, sometimes admiringly and sometimes in ways he does not understand, while he stands quietly hoping the day will end soon. A still photograph from the set leaks to the press, and suddenly newspapers across Europe begin printing his face with descriptions calling him angelic, seductive, and otherworldly, despite the fact that he is only 15. Adults write about him with a tone that turns admiration into something more uncomfortable, blurring the line between innocence and fantasy. Bjorn cannot escape these articles because they follow him to every hotel, every interview, and every conversation. Inside, he begins to feel a mix of confusion and embarrassment, wondering why adults are attaching meanings to him that do not match how he sees himself. He wants to perform well but feels pressure building, as if he is carrying a role he never agreed to, and each new day adds more weight to his shoulders. He slowly starts to disconnect from his own identity, becoming the chosen one to everyone except himself, and this growing distance becomes its own private suffering. At the Cannes premiere, the pressure finally peaks as cameras fire without pause and reporters shout questions that make him feel exposed in front of the world. He is pushed forward by handlers, photographed by strangers, and touched by people who see him as a fascination rather than a child trying to stay calm. His grandmother smiles proudly beside him, unaware that he feels trapped in a moment that he cannot escape. But Cannes was nothing, compared to the obsession waiting for him in Japan. Japan in the early 1970s embraced the idea of the Bishinen, the beautiful boy who symbolized innocence combined with desire, and when Bjorn landed there, he was absorbed into that culture almost instantly as crowds began treating him not like a visitor but like a legend arriving to fulfill their fantasies. He found himself surrounded by people who already believed he belonged to them, with executives who measured his value not by his safety or comfort but by how perfectly he fit the image they wanted to sell. Within days, he was pushed into a cycle of appearances and obligations that made it clear that he was no longer a young guest in a foreign country but a commodity that powerful adults had decided to control. The work schedule tightened quickly as he was booked non-stop for television shows, glossy photo shoots, and commercials crafted to highlight his beauty rather than his talent, while magazines published spreads that portrayed him in ways no child should ever be framed. Adult hosts on variety programs teased and flirted with him in ways he didn't understand, and the adults around him acted as though this was normal, acceptable, and simply part of the business. Through it all, he remained only 16, a boy trying to follow instructions while being pushed into an adult world that treated his discomfort as irrelevant. He later described Japan as the darkest time of his life because he was taken to parties filled with adults he didn't know, where alcohol was offered freely, and where he felt pressured to behave in ways that made him feel small, helpless, and confused. At those gatherings he was expected to act soft, gentle, and submissive for the entertainment of others, and no one stepped in to protect him from the emotional damage that came with being treated like an object instead of a person. The more he tried to comply, the more he felt himself slipping away from any sense of identity, until the version of Bjorn the world wanted became louder than the one he was trying to hold on to inside. Alone in hotel rooms he began to break, crying at night because he could no longer recognize the boy he had been before the world decided who he should become, and he grew to hate his own reflection because it reminded him of the image everyone else was using for their gain. He felt owned by strangers who saw him not as a human being but as a product, and each day deepened the belief that he had been stripped of his own personhood by people who never cared what their expectations were doing to him. When he tried to pull away halfway through the trip, he learned that contracts had locked him in place, and agencies tightened their grip as the money flowing from his image became too valuable to let him go, leaving him to endure an exploitation that would echo for the next 50 years. And this, the breaking of a teenage boy under global obsession, became the moment that would define everything that followed. When Bjorn finally returns to Sweden, the noise of Japan falls silent, but the weight inside him only grows heavier as he feels himself collapsing under memories he never asked for. He begins sinking into depression, battling panic attacks that strike without warning, and finding it harder to trust anyone as relationships around him begin to fracture. He looks in the mirror and feels unattractive for the first time, pouring those feelings into drinking as he tries to numb the sense that a piece of him was taken abroad and never returned. As the years pass, his career slips away because casting directors now see him as a symbol rather than a person, and they admit they cannot fit him into roles without audiences seeing the mythical image attached to him. He becomes trapped between the ghost of the boy whom the world worshipped and the reality of the man whom the industry now ignores, leaving him caught in a space where he feels too unforgettable to be chosen and yet no longer beautiful enough to be desired. His identity turns into a contradiction that he cannot escape, forming a prison made from expectations he never chose. Then life strikes even harder when his infant son dies unexpectedly, a loss that shatters him in a way fame never could, deepening the emotional wounds that already followed him. His daughter eventually grows distant, and Bjorn finds himself living through stretches of poverty where his apartment grows decayed and chaotic, matching the loneliness he carries within. Every corner of his life becomes a quiet reminder of how far he has fallen from the fantasy that once defined him, leaving him to face the ruins of a life reshaped by forces outside his control. When the 2021 documentary The Most Beautiful Boy in the World is made, he finally speaks openly about the truth he has carried for 50 years, revealing the agony of learning the full story of his mother's suicide, the manipulation he experienced under Visconti, and the sexualization that consumed him in Japan. He returns to the places that shaped him, the audition room, the place where his mother died, the hotels where he cried alone, and the home he once shared with his grandmother, as if retracing steps he never understood at the time. Even now, he says he does not hate his past, but he mourns the boy he was never allowed to be, admitting quietly that he lost his own self-image because the world built one for him long before he could choose his own. Bjorn's story moves beyond the pain that shaped him and becomes a reminder of how easily a child can be swallowed by an industry that values beauty over humanity, and his survival becomes its own quiet act of defiance. His life forces us to confront how a system built on admiration can turn cruel when it stops seeing the person and sees only the image, leaving a child to carry adult expectations he never agreed to. What remains now is the understanding that his journey is not just a memory from the past but a mirror held up to a world that still struggles to protect those who cannot protect themselves. It stands as a warning about how vulnerable children become when adults project fantasies onto them, twisting innocence into entertainment and disguising harm as admiration, leaving wounds that can last for decades. His experience challenges us to question the boundaries we have allowed to blur in the pursuit of art, fame, and beauty, and it forces us to see the cost paid by those who never had the choice to walk away. In this light, Bjorn's story becomes a call for accountability, for empathy, and for a deeper understanding of how exploitation can hide behind praise. So now the questions turn to you, because stories like this survive only when people continue to think about what truly happened and why it matters, and your voice becomes part of that reflection. Do you believe the industry protected Bjorn, or do you think it failed him completely in its hunger for an unforgettable face? Should Death in Venice be viewed differently today, knowing the truths he later shared, and do you feel that media obsession with beauty still puts children at risk in the same ways it did 50 years ago? Share your thoughts openly, because conversations like these help protect the next generation from repeating the same tragedies, and your perspective may be the one that shifts how someone else sees this story. If you believe voices like Bjorn's deserve to be heard without being ignored or glamorized, then subscribe, like this video, and share it so that more people understand why silence can be dangerous. Someone out there needs to hear this, needs to reflect on it, and needs to realize that beauty should never cost a child their identity, and Bjorn's survival remains proof that even a story built on exploitation can end with truth.